This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening to the City of Warrenville Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of the Whole regular meeting. It is Monday, April 12th at 7 p.m. In accordance with Governor Pritzker's disaster proclamation, Section 7E of the Illinois Open Meetings Act, 5 ILCS 120/7, parens E, and a determination by the mayor of the City of Warrenville, this meeting will be held virtually. All persons wishing to provide public comment are strongly encouraged to submit written comments via email at info@warrenville.il.us by 5 p.m. the day of the meeting. Again, please note that this meeting is being recorded. Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Brummel.
Here.
Alderman Anderson.
Here.
Alderman Ashar.
Here.
Alderman Berry.
Here.
Alderman Davalos.
Here.
Alderman Goodman.
Here.
Alderman Krischel.
Here.
Alderman Widener.
Here.
Alderman Wilson.
Here.
City Administrator Coakley.
Here.
Assistant City Administrator White.
Here.
Finance Director Dahlstrand. Finance Director Dahlstrand with us.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm having technical issues.
Thank you. Public Works Director Kukla.
Here.
Management Analyst Youngmeyer.
Here.
Myself, Deputy Clerk Gravetti, and City Clerk Larson.
Here.
Did I leave anyone off? Okay, you have a quorum.
I think we have everyone. Good. Now we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please say it silently to yourself as we say it aloud here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done.
Indivisible, not individual. Okay. Citizens' comments. We will begin with any present at City Hall wishing to make a comment, and there is no one here who would like to make a comment at this time. Now we will hear from any verbal comments from the public participating by phone. If anyone from the public wishing to speak, please announce yourself with your name and address. Please speak slowly and clearly so we can capture your information. Once we have everyone wishing to speak, I will call on you one by one to proceed with your comments. Is there anyone on the phone wishing to speak at this time? Okay, hearing no one. We will go next to email comments. We do have one email which was sent in, and I will read that. This is regarding video poker. It says, greetings to all. It has been brought to my attention that there will be a discussion of whether or not video poker should be taken under consideration during the meeting this evening. I am here to ask the council to highly consider looking into it. It is no secret that this past year has put a tremendous hardship on bars, restaurants, hotels in our town, which in turn has impacted the tax revenue for our city. Right now, so many of us are working on minimal staff to keep our doors open. By allowing video poker, it would give us the opportunity to hire more employees. As a family-owned business in this town for over 55 years, we have been through some ups and downs, but have never seen anything like this. Please help us, and in turn, it will help our city with much needed source of revenue that can help keep our awesome hometown thriving. Thank you for your time and consideration. Respectfully yours, Lynn Burgess of the Town Tap. Thank you. And that was the only email we received for this evening. Okay. Official and staff comments. Mayor, if you have any comments?
Good evening. Thank you. Just one thing this evening, I wanted to highlight the fact that it's the National Public Safety Communicators Week this week. My association with DUCOM over the years, our 911 provider, has taught me to respect very much what they do for us 24/7. They have very sophisticated jobs, very difficult jobs that require a very high level of training. They do this week in and week out for thousands of times every week, almost flawlessly. And so just a reminder that without them, our first responders would not be able to get to where they need to get as quickly as they do. So I just wanted to highlight again the fact that they do this job day in and day out. They do it very, very well. It requires a high level of training, and we should be aware of the fact that police and fire depend on them to get where they need to go. So that's what I have for this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Clerk?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Treasurer? I don't think the treasurer's at the meeting this evening. Is that correct? Okay. Now we will call on each alderman individually. Alderman Anderson?
Thank you, Chairman Barry. Just one comment for everyone. I received my Groot letter in the mail reminding me that we were going to have the transition, so I was thrilled to see that come through. But then I also learned that I kind of missed a deadline on signing up for the container that was going to be right for my household. So to all the citizens who might be watching, please go out to our warrenville.il.us garbage recycling yard waste website, and you get the update. You can see where you email in to order the right container for you. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a great program, and just want everyone to sign up accordingly. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Ashour?
Just congratulations to all the people that were elected this last week.
Thank you, Alderman Ashour. I have no comment at this time. Alderman Davalos?
Yes. Yeah, I will probably be talking about this every week until May 1st, although we have a week off at the end of the month. But the Environmental Advisory Commission is going to be conducting an Arbor Day celebration at the parking lot at Hubble on May 1st. And there are going to be, it's going to be downsized from what it usually is, but there will be the free seedling trees that will be given away. And there's some other things that are going to be given away. And it's, I'd also like to add to that on the same date, Warrenville in Bloom is, I think they're still doing this, is going to be selling plants that they are growing as we speak. And they have a variety of different kinds of things. And I would suggest you can do both of them during the day. The one for the EAC is from 10 to 12. And maybe the clerk has the hours for the Warrenville and Bloom, but both of those events are going on May 1st. So I just want to make you aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman?
Thank you. I want to echo Alderman Ashour and congratulate all the recently elected officials and to all who voted in the April 6th election. We literally could not do this without you. Is that my microphone? I also wanted to let everybody know, in case you've missed it, Fermilab made international news this week with a phenomenal new discovery about the spin of muons. It's a little bit complicated, but the upshot of it is that there may be some very new physics, which is terribly exciting to everybody in the physics community, things that we don't know and are hoping to find out more about. So I was thrilled to see the really wide international coverage of this news and the attention that it got in so many different media publications and podcasts and TV shows. And it's wonderful to have people excited about science and the importance of basic research, which can help us understand the universe a little bit better. So I just wanted to make sure you all had heard about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Krischel.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Widener.
Thank you. Congratulations on your reelection, Mayor Brummel, and congratulations to Alderman Anderson and Alderman Davalos and Alderman Berry on your election as the incumbents. I was also very pleased to see how quickly all the political signs were removed and our character and area in Warrenville was brought back to its pre-campaign beauty and character. That was really nice to see, and appreciate everybody's efforts with that regard, removing their signs. And we also, the Bicyclist and Pedestrian Committee has an event coming up on May 15th. Everyone should mark their calendars for the bike rodeo. It's an event for younger kids, teach them safety, and we'll take a look at their bikes and make sure they're operational for the good riding seasons in spring and summer. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. And Alderman Wilson.
I'd just like to thank all those who took the time to vote in this election. It's critical that we continue to do that and think about it. We also had an occasion, I took a look at some of the other elections in the cities surrounding us, and it's amazing the few people that came out, and yet in Warrenville, it was great. So I just wanted to extend that thank you to everyone. It's our responsibility, our duty, and our privilege. So thank you all for your votes.
Thank you. Okay, before we go on to the business of the meeting, I would just like to make this information kind of well known, I guess. This is regarding conference call guidelines. The meeting audio and videos is recorded, which we all know, to ensure everyone can be heard and has an opportunity to speak without interference from background noise. We need to kind of follow this guideline. If possible, when you are not speaking, please mute your phone or microphone. If you cannot mute, please call from a location with minimal background noise, from a TV or a radio or any background conversation. Background noises make it difficult for everyone to hear and will likely be picked up on the recording. So if everybody can just make sure that when they're not speaking that they are muted. Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, now on to the business of the meeting. Consideration of FY 2022 water and sewer rate increase. This will be discussed by Finance Director Kevin Dahlstrand.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In November, staff approached the Public Safety and Finance Committee committee and asked for permission to include a proposed rate increase for both water and sewer in the 2022 proposed budget process. As we did that and we worked through that, that came as a result of work done by the EMRP work group, and we did include that in the proposed budget. The proposed increase would be a 10% rate increase for water and a 20% rate increase for sewer, which is what we're asking you to consider tonight. I do want to provide you with some additional information that was requested today. So give me a moment. Let me get my screen shared here for just a second. And you should be able to see my screen. There were some questions asked that we needed to share information. So I'm going to skip number 1 for a minute. I'm going to go to right to number 2. The question was asked, is there any type of automatic inflator built into our water and sewer rates? And the answer to that, there is not. There has not been, and there is not currently one built into there. The proposed rate increases are a result of the work done by the EMRP work group that has been done so far. There will be additional work by that EMRP work group, and that will likely lead to automatic rate inflation factors included for any future rate increases, so that we don't have this issue again. It was also asked how the roughly $500,000 in new revenue from these rate increases would be expended. The first answer is on the sewer side. It largely is due to the I&I reduction program. It is a program that we should have been doing for many years, and we should have been spending money on that already and have not. Annual I&I expenses are projected to be about $600,000 annually on average. In addition, Naperville will also be incurring some treatment plant expansion expenses in the near future, and the city of Warrenville will need to be in a position to be able to pay for our portion of those expenses as well. On the water side, we do need to start building up some available funds for the maintenance of existing water towers in the near future. Will need to be rehabilitated and painted. Public Works Director Kukler has pointed out that those expenses happen every 10 to 12 years, so they are not one-time expenses, and we do need to build up for that. Going back to the first point that was raised today, there was a question asked about what our rate increase history had been over the most recent 5 years. I prepared a chart, and I did email that out to everyone today. In case you did not receive that, I do have it up here on the screen for you. Going back about 5 years did not really provide a wide enough picture for where we've been. So I went back to 2011 to show what the annual rate increases have been. As you can see, the middle column there is the rate increases on water. The right-hand side is the increases on sewer rates. You'll notice 2011, 12, 13, we did do rate increases on both. In fiscal 14, we did not increase the rates on water, but we did increase the sewer rates by 6.4%. And then we did not again increase any rates until fiscal 19, which took effect on May 1 of 18. That was about a 3% increase on water and a 5% increase on sewer. We again increased rates for fiscal 2020, which was effective in May 1 of 19. And those are 5% increases for both sewer and water rates. And finally, last year, beginning in September, we increased water rates by 10% and also increased sewer rates by the same 10%. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Hold on one moment. Get you back. The EMRP work group will be doing additional work. And one of the things we'll be working on will be rates, a long-term rate long-term rate recommendation, as I indicated. One of the ways I've been working toward that has been working on a product called Waterworth, and I worked with an outside consultant. And what this does, and I'm just show you a little bit of how this works. We go into here and plug in all of our data that we project in the future years on. In this case, I'm looking right now. These are capital expenses. In the middle of the chart here, there is, for example, the Naperville treatment plant upgrades beginning in 2023 and going all the way out to 2028. Those are expenses that we will obviously have to be able to fund at some point, and we need to make sure that we're headed toward doing that. We also then in here, we include the revenue side of things. We project where those will be into the out years. including such things as rate increases and the other non-operating revenue, which includes such things as the water tower rents, which are non-operating revenues, but we do include those into there as well. I'm sorry, I have the sewer up. On the sewer side, we make sure that we've included sewer rate increases into the out years as well. I will show you what the overall picture looks like. These gold lines represent the sewer service revenue that we would expect to receive. It's projected right now out through 2046. And of course, that is a long way off, and there are things that will change between now and then. We have into this model, which is not done. There is still work to be done as we build in for those out years, and as we make our recommendation. We have built into here various degrees of water rate or sewer rate increases that make these gold bars and help fund this side of the water and sewer fund. These, let me take out the sewer sales. The blue area here is the operating expenses, the regular salaries and related things like that. The green areas are capital improvements, which is this lighter green area, and capital expansion, which you notice here is the spike, and that's the spike that would deal with the water holding or the sewer holding tank if we need to do that, and that right now is projected in 2031. So again, when you put all that back together and you add in all the operating expenses, we need to raise revenue so that we are exceeding these green and blue areas over the long term. So we need to make sure that we do that. The fact that we did not do rate increases in earlier years before now has sort of have us a little bit in this position where we need to play a little catch up to make sure we get caught up with meeting our future obligations as well. I will pop over for a minute and show you the water side. I won't show you how we got all the detail and it functions the exact same way. The gold bars are the revenue. The blue is the operating expenses, and green is the capital expenditure improvements. I'll show you a little bit of how this works on the increase side. We plug in the rate increases into here in any specific year, and it will then change how the whole thing looks. So I'm going to show you a quick example. If in 2023 we were to recommend a 20% water rate increase, that you see that there's a significant impact over the out years, as obviously the years build on each other. So the future recommendations will need to keep things more in line with how they would be on a regular basis, and that each year will not need to be a large volume increase or a large percentage increase, but we do need to play some catch up as we do that as well. So on both sides of this equation, we're working a little bit from behind, and the larger part of that was on the sewer side because of how things happened a little sooner than anybody could have anticipated. When Naperville realized how their expansion was going to work, and then conveyed that to us, that happened sooner than we anticipated. So that's certainly a large part of what's happening in there. I want to point out also that we do not know yet if this holding tank for the sewage will actually become necessary in the end. It's hopeful that the I&I program will help diminish the need for that, or maybe eliminate the need for that at all. So that's a model that when we have finalized and we work toward making those long-term recommendations, we'll have this in a more finalized position and be able to share this with you. I will also have our consultant join us on that call, and he can help explain a little bit about how we did this, what we did, and what our recommendations would be going forward. I think at this time that was all I have to share, and we'd be glad to answer any questions you may have. Also in your backup, there is a chart that shows the impact that these rate increases would have on the Warrenville residents. A household of 4 could expect to see an annual increase of about $170 in their bill. That would be for a household of 4. And again, that be reminded that everyone gets billed six times per year. So it would be about a $28 bi-monthly increase in the bills that they receive now for both water and sewer. So if there's any questions, I can entertain those at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Brummel, questions, comments?
I have no questions, just a couple of comments. One, a reminder to everyone that sewer and water accounts are, those are enterprise accounts that they have to support themselves, that no tax money goes into the support of those accounts. And so that the money that is received from your bills is what keeps things going. That's it. So whatever has to be accomplished in terms of paying staff, making repairs and doing maintenance and adding a new capacity has to be paid for by the sewer and water rates. And the second thing is, again, a reminder that of the 15 surrounding communities in our backup, it's noted that Warrenville still, with these increases, will still be the lowest in terms of combined sewer and water rates for a family of 4 for the average that we use in Warrenville. So we're still in a very good position, but we have to make these increases in order to keep the quality of the service that we provide going forward at the level that people expect. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, Finance Director Dahlstrom, I appreciate the information that's been provided. It's been very helpful. I just want to make sure I understand. I think if I read the tool that you just showed us correctly, that this 10 and 20 is kind of the plan for the next 3 years. And would that imply then that 100, you showed us the family of 4, it was 169 annual increase. Does that imply that next year they would have another 169 on top of that, and the next year another 169 essentially?
We have not finalized any rates beyond the 2022 recommendation we have now. Additional work by the EMRP work group will be needed to formalize those rates. However, it is anticipated that as we play catch up here for a while, that there will have to be some rate increases that would be more in line with what's here, but we don't know that yet for sure.
It's, and I certainly understand the concept of catch up. I appreciate what you sent out today. I hadn't appreciated there was the gap between 2014 and 2018, so I can see how we would have gotten behind. I do think these, it's not an insignificant number of what we're asking. Just, people plan their annual budgets, and I was hoping that this was a one-time we were going to have to do a 20% increase. And I understand our water rates look very, very low, but I think there's a reason for that. But our sewer rates are competitive, but not as competitive as the water. So I had hoped we were only going to have to do that one time, but seeing it's probably going to be multiple years of this, it's a tough message, and it sounds like it's something we have to do, but it's a bit of a bummer. That's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman Ashar.
Do these rates include the replacement of sewer and water mains over the long term? Or
Yes,
is that, okay, so that's not part of our.
That's one of the things we're
maintenance
focusing on in there, is to meet the capital costs as well.
Okay, well, we have the benefit of low water rates. And the sewer rates are killing us, but we're stuck with that. So, but it is good that we can highlight the fact that we've done a good job with our water and that other communities are paying a ton of money by comparison. Thank you.
Thank you. My only question is, do residential and commercial pay the same amount per 1,000 gallons, whatever that is, or the base rate, or do we have different amounts for residential versus commercial?
Well, the commodity charge is the same, meaning that the actual cost of the water itself, they pay the same rates. However, the base charges do vary by size of meter and type of service. Largely, there would be a difference between commercial and residential.
Okay, so what you've been showing us is basically residential.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I just have a couple of quick clarifying things. So this has been mentioned, but yeah, I'm just still concerned with the sewer. I understand what's going on with it, but we're right in the middle of the rankings here, and with continued 20% increases, we certainly are going to get into the more expensive part of the rankings as we up this. I know other communities have rate increases also, but I don't think it's going to be that much longer that we may be looking on this in a favorable way. And so other people are looking at this too, and they will soon see in their bills. So I just want to encourage, as I talk to residents, because I'm in a neighborhood that some have sewer, some don't, some have water, some don't. It's all over the place. So I've mentioned this before. It's a topic of conversation in my neighborhood. So I need to. It would be so helpful to me to have some feeling going forward about the stability of these rates. And I know we don't have that tonight. I'm just encouraging. Those are some interesting graphs that Director Dahlstrand showed going forward, which could be helpful. But I personally would love to just know a little bit more to talk to people about it, because people are on the fence about changing. And I'd like to be able to say, yeah, it's not going to be a 30% increase for 5 years or something. I'd like to be able to have a little more stability. And again, I know people are working very hard on this, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the graphs and the rankings with other communities tonight that you provided. I just have a sense of anxiety about talking about this sometimes because it seems so uncertain, and people don't necessarily give credence to the uncertainty. They don't want to hear about the uncertainty. So that's just a comment. Do we have any? My other question is: do we have any money flowing in from water and sewer works with the TIF? Will some money be coming back? I know we've provided through TIF dollars, or soon to be TIF dollars, water and sewer to some of the new areas in TIF 4 especially.
Well, one of the things
it's going into the calculations. Thank you.
Oh, yes. One of the things that's been factored in there into those graphs is population growth and what that might mean for future revenue as well. And we'll make sure that when we have those graphs before you again, I'll make sure I point those out to you and how that's been factored in.
That would be great. That would be great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman.
Yes, I have several comments. No one wants to raise these rates. No one on the EMRP work group wants to raise these rates. We wouldn't be raising these rates if we didn't have to raise these rates. The expenses that we have to keep our system going, that we're able to sit down right now and calculate and predict, are much higher than our current revenue can pay. It's really that simple. After this increase, we will still be the lowest combined water and sewer total by 15% over the second lowest. And if you look at the median community on this list, which is Downers Grove, for the estimated family of 4 that we're using as a comparison, we would still be 40% lower than the median community near us. So that's somewhat comforting to people who are concerned about the budget. But if we're able to save money, if we're able to find other sources of revenue, I'm very hopeful about the rescue plan funds being used maybe in this fund, because there aren't usually that many opportunities to have revenue like that in an enterprise fund. If we're able to trim expenses, the I&I program, and being able to knock off that $6 million sewage tank from that list of expenses would be a huge, huge deal. But one thing that Kevin didn't show when he was demoing the model with all of his graphs and bar charts was, and I don't know, maybe he would think it was worth doing it now, but it's just what that graph looks like if we don't increase these rates right now, because we did see that as an example in the EMRP work group. And 1 year without the increase, if we just didn't do it this year, makes the next 30 years of this chart, well, I guess it's 22 years of this chart, absolutely impossible. We couldn't get a loan. We couldn't probably get funding for building the water tower. It's just not, the numbers don't work. So if we didn't have to raise these rates, we wouldn't, but we have to. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, if you'd like,
Yes.
I can show you a quick example of what it would be like if we didn't do the 20% rate increase during this next year, if that would be helpful to the committee.
Okay, if everyone's agreeable to that.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Kevin, you want to go ahead then?
Give me just a second. Let me get my computer to play along here. So what I did was I took the rate increase out. There was the 20% rate increase in there, and you see everything now, we fall below the line everywhere, all the way out into 2046. And let me go back and put it back to remind you what this looks like. So here's what it looked like before we did that. You see, we build up, and there's some years where we exceed, which is fine because it will allow us to rebuild some fund that balance into there. But everywhere in there, we're a little bit above all the expenses, all of the operating and capital expenditures. Now, let me go back and take that out, show you what that looks like. Take that out, go back to the graph, and there's what it looks like. We are literally, with the exception of one little year right in here, we are short of what we need in every year going out to 2046. So as Alderman Goodman indicated there, if we don't start doing this now, we're going to be in a far worse boat down the road than we are right now. So we need to make sure that we start doing this now, that we build the plan to do this and keep moving forward so we don't end up in that boat. And if we can remove any of these large expenditures in here, if we don't need to build that holding tank, that would be a big savings on what we would need in the future. So I think that's a very valid point. I should have thought to show it right out of the gate, but I'm glad she raised that issue because we can see what happens if we don't do what we need to do.
Great, thank you. Alderman Krischel.
Thanks. Finance Director Dahlstrom, could you on that last chart that you just had up there, quick question on that. I think Alderman Anderson had kind of touched on that. So there's increases in sewer revenue, right? Those are the yellow bars, and we see them go up every year. So is that implying additional rate increases, or how do we get those increased bars there? I guess that's
so as I mentioned, this model isn't complete, but I've been playing, I don't mean playing in a fun way, but I mean playing with how the right way to look at what our needs are, and you can adjust those rate increases every year as we go. And I've built in rate increases right now, which I will be talking through with the EMRP work group. It shows a 15% rate increase right now in 23, a 12% increase in 24, 12 and 25. But again, those aren't built on anything other than my working with the model to see where it would, how the effects of any rate increase we have would have in future years. So again, don't hold me to anything past 2022 at this point until we get all that resolved. But that's how those bars increase, because you have to remember, anything you do in an early year is obviously going to compound in the out years as well.
Right, understood. Yeah, so I mean, as long as that's, I understand where those come from now, right? Where the increases later on. So there is estimated increases in future years, so that just so we're all understand that. Okay.
Yeah, they're the rates that I built in as I've been working through the model, and as I say, we'll be talking through with the EMRP work group.
Right. So I guess my point is that, you know, to be able to fund the things that we need to fund and pay for the things out of this fund that we need to, we have to increase this year or next year or both. Or if we don't do 20% for sewer this year, and we have to do 40 next year, right? So I think, yeah, understandably we have to. It is what it is. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Widener.
Thank you. Kevin, this is the first time I've heard about the tank. That big green triangle really caught me when you showed it to me. Could you go into a little detail about where that came from and the possibility of it being required, and whether there's going to be land acquisition as part of it, or whether it ends up being on Naperville's property? How does this whole thing transpire?
Well, I'm the numbers end of the equation, so I'm going to ask if Public Works Director Kukler could jump in there and help answer that question, please.
Sure. The holding tank would be something that Naperville has had the right to require of Warrenville, I think since we expanded in Cantera years ago. It's part of that agreement where we had to reserve a piece of property, a small piece of property over there, to potentially deal with any increased flows that might go beyond what our agreement is with Naperville for them to accept from Warrenville. And in talking with Naperville and their staff, Alderman Goodman referenced earlier is correct. If we make really good progress on our I&I reduction program and reduce the amount of groundwater flows that are flowing into the sanitary sewer and seeping into different places, that'll reduce the amount of flow going down to Naperville and ultimately down to their plant. And it's very possible we don't have to build that, but if we don't make progress in the I&I, we're going to have to, it's almost certain we would have to build a holding tank at some point. And there would be property acquisition required for it. Ideally, the spot where we would, if we were to have to construct that, the ideal spot would be the very downstream end of our system where it dumps into Naperville's system. Because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, the most flow coming from Warrenville where you could catch. It's effectively, and John doesn't like when I say this, it's effectively like a detention pond for sanitary sewer flows, but it would be an unclosed tank, but it'd be something that would take some of the excess flow, hold it temporarily, and then release it into the system downstream when there was capacity to do so.
Just as a follow-up, so we would have to purchase property. Do you have any idea of how much acreage we would need for something like that, and what the cost of the infrastructure might be?
I think we've estimated it might cost about $500,000. I don't remember what the acreage was specifically. Part of the thing we've been working through with Naperville over the last couple of years is Engineering Enterprise has been working for the city on our I&I reduction program, and they also had a study where we, per our agreement with Naperville, had to update the impact, evaluate our impact on their system. And part of that was that they're working with Naperville to try to figure out, or we are, but EI has been working with Naperville to try to figure out how the methodology they'd use to size that tank. And at this point, kind of in a holding pattern with Naperville until they get some sense of how we're doing with our I&I reduction program. So I don't know exactly how much it is. I mean, EEI has taken a stab at it, but it's not, nothing's finalized because Naperville ultimately has to approve whatever methodology we'd use to size that. But as I said, that Naperville at this point is satisfied to wait and see how the impacts of our I&I reduction program, which we are just in the very early stages of right now. I mean, there's 2 items later on tonight's agenda for flow monitoring and for a sanitary sewer system evaluation study, which are, I think, in the third and fourth basins out of the 11 we have in town. So I'm planning to probably calendar year 23, I think would be appropriate, because Fermilab is also working on some I&I reduction in their village area. It's slated. I just had an update last week. They're slated to finish construction on that in January 2023. So I think 2023 would be a good time to do some follow-up flow monitoring for these areas where we've had improvements to see the impact we've had on the system, on the I&I, and evaluate how much we've reduced and how successful we've been.
So would 2023 be the year then we would know whether or not we needed to do the tank and acquire property for it, or would it be after that?
I think it would probably be after that.
Okay.
Naperville has not been pushing this actively right now. They've been very cooperative. I maintain regular communication with them, and I think it's going to be after that. I think they really want to see us go through a cycle of our I&I reduction programs before making that judgment. So that's why we have it right now in the EMRP. I've got it put in, I think Kevin said, fiscal year 31. So it's a ways out there, just so we don't lose track of it, that it is something that we might need to do, but it's not something that is imminent.
Okay. And then between the years 2014 and 2018, was there any one specific thing that caused us to fall behind in these estimates and not meet our costs?
Well, I think over time we had a lot of money from Cantera that was allocated or earmarked to do sewer and water extensions, which staff did use, and council approved many contracts for sewer and water extension projects. And I think that kind of gave an artificial comfort level to how much fund balance there was available. And I think as we worked through those sewer and water extensions and spent that money, you started to get a better sense of how little fund balance there was and how much we were falling behind in our rates. I don't know why the rates weren't raised during that time, other than I don't know why they weren't raised during that time, but since over the last 4 or 5 years now with the I&I reduction program, Kevin mentioned that's an anticipated about $600,000 a year in expenses on average, which it totals over 11 years about 6.6 million. That sewer holding tank, if we were to have to construct it, is, I think we estimated to be roughly around another $6 million too. And Naperville has treatment plant upgrades that are coming. I forget where they're slotted in, but they've got some more definition as to when those expenses will occur, and they provided that to us. That's another, I think, $5 or $6 million worth of expenses too. We're responsible because I think we're about 1/9 of Naperville's total flows to their treatment plant, so that's how they calculate our prorated share of those improvements.
Okay. I understand the necessity. This is going to be rather shocking. It's rather shocking to me, and I think it's going to be really shocking to the residents. And I think the communication that surrounds the announcement of these raises is going to be, or these increases is going to be really important to develop. You know, the cost comparisons to other municipalities, I think, needs to be mentioned, as well as the likelihood of future increases and what that might mean to the individual resident. It's going to be hard for them to understand that their rates are going up 20% this year, but they deserve to know if they're going to go up again by 20% the following year. I think we need to be clear in our communication to them about that. And it's, you know, I think a matter of philosophy too on how we go about making these increases. Do we want to, you know, I mean, 20% is big, but a lot of places, you know, they charge where they want to be 5 years from now, so they're not going back to the resident every single year with another increase. That gets very wearing on citizens, I think, when they get repeated increases to their water and sewer bill year after year after year. So I don't know if we can bundle it, and have a rate increase 2 or 3, every 2 or 3 years or every 5 years or something like that. But I think it deserves, a look to see how we want to, exercise our philosophy on raising these rates. Do we do it repeatedly year after year, or do we, base it on where we want to be in 5 years and do it all at once? I think there's a couple competing philosophies that we could determine and discuss. So those are my comments. Thank you for the report. It was really informative, and the new graphing system that you got, it really shows a lot of great detail. So thanks for taking the time to show us that.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Yes, I like a couple things to mention. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, the understanding is the fact that by law, the sewer rates and the water rates have to pay for all of the expenses. We cannot take tax money or from other sources to pay for all the things that we need to do. Second thing, I think that's right, and Kevin, you may correct me on that if I'm wrong, or John, but we are required to use those revenues to pay for all the expenses. We work through Naperville. We don't have our own sewer facilities. So every time they have to upgrade or change their circumstances, they have to build additional facilities, and they charge us for the addition of our portion of that. And the point is that we're looking at the possibility this I&I thing has cost us an awful lot of money. If we had started 3 years ago or 4 years ago by increasing the rates back then, perhaps we wouldn't have so much now. But that's an if and but, and it doesn't count for today. We have to look at what we're looking for in the future and trying to put the best face on it that we can. It may be possible that we don't need that holding tank, but in trying to determine the future of the system, we have to take that into consideration and think about it. And that is based upon some of the figures that we have for the ongoing expenses that we may have to face. It may hopefully that we won't need that. And that's a big, big difference in the prices that we have to look forward to. We didn't start soon enough. That's no complaint. It's done. We have to start looking now at what we're looking at for the future. And I think that what we're looking at is not nice, but it's necessary. It's required. We have to do it.
Thank you. Administrator Coakley, you have some comments?
Thank you. Hopefully it can help clarify and address some of the questions. First and foremost, while this coming year's rate increases are before you now and action needs to be decided on those, all the future increases and the modeling, as Kevin and Phil were talking about, we're going to bring those back to another meeting. I think Kevin mentioned that earlier on in his comments, and have a lot more discussion and all the things, Alderman Widener, you were one of the more recent speakers that you're talking about. Future year increases and how we do that is all open for discussion. There's nothing set in stone. We know we will have to have some increases, but how those are done and what amounts and how we do those, that's all coming to committee meetings, and we can take as many as the council wishes. I doubt that'll be done in one meeting. It may be an annual thing, but we will be back with those things. We wanted Kevin to present that information tonight because, well, in a perfect world, we would have had all those discussions and had plenty of time to prepare and plan ahead, but there's a little more urgency with it than time to get all of that done in advance. But again, we will be providing all that information. sharing that, discussing it, coming back with whatever answers the council needs for future discussions and decisions. A couple of things about how we got here, though. The one question was about the sewer holding tank. That's been discussed and noted in some different documents and things before, but it always I think it always got sort of perhaps tucked in, I won't want to say buried, but tucked in into the I&I discussion, which is a much bigger issue with the phasing and how we're going to do all that. And the sewer holding tank was always we might have to do this, but we're not sure. We'll see how the I&I work goes. If we can reduce the amount of stormwater and the excessive amount of flows during heavy rain events, then we likely, and this is as certain as we can get, might not need to put that in ever. That's the goal, that's the hope, that's what we're working on, and it won't be just a hope in the future. We'll be able to quantify that, document it, and Phil's right. Fermilab's doing a lot of work. We're doing a lot of work that you know about. That should help, and perhaps either we'll push it way out even in future years, or again, maybe we won't need it ever. Just as a side note, when Phil says I don't like his comment about it, he refers sort of in jest that this is just like a big open detention pond. Well, nobody wants a big sanitary sewer detention pond. So that's the part I don't like. It's got to be enclosed. No one would want to be within a mile of that ever. It wouldn't be attractive in an urban area. Otherwise, we have to do the business that we have to do in terms of our facilities. How did we get here so quickly? If you remember back the number of years of discussion, I have gone on about it many times. We have, and I don't want to insult anyone in the past because they've done excellent work in public works, but we've evolved in that department from a reactive, getting out there and taking care of the job, whatever needed to be done and knocking it out of the park, to trying to keep that level of service up with more planning over the last probably decade. Part of that was work with public works, some aldermen and finance department, and creating the EMRP, the enterprise maintenance and replacement plan, so that we could do a better job of projecting ahead the costs for replacement and ongoing maintenance, because we were keeping up with, for decades, what we needed to do to run the next year and maybe a year ahead, but we weren't putting aside the money for the future replacement costs. So there is some catch up on that too. Phil pointed out when Cantera was built, there was literally a windfall. The developer was required to pay for all the installation of all the water and sewer lines and all the connections, but they still had to pay the same fees to the city. And there was some odd $7, $8, $9 million, I don't remember the number, that the city had. And Mike Smith at the time rightly pointed out, this is a lot of money. When we sat down with the council and said we could start to expand the system and to serve all the areas of the community, residential areas that are not served. So that was a huge benefit. So we didn't need to raise the rates at that time. We eventually got to the point of creating the EMRP, and as Kevin has even discussed at budget meetings a number of times, what did you call it? It was a double, not really a home run in that plan. It did all the inventory and all the information and got all the operating costs, but didn't quite properly cost all the future expenses. So our plan was to get to that right away. A few other things got in the way of and delayed it a little, but we have been talking about the need to increase rates and to catch up to make sure that we were paying for future maintenance replacement. Then about 3 or 4 years ago, overlapping with development issues in the community, Naperville notified us that our peak flows were really high during some points, exceeding our agreement and some EPA standards that they had, and the city would need to start reducing those. This has been a contractual agreement forever, but they hadn't really been paying much attention to it to the south of us. That was fine. We were going on about our operations. But once that became apparent, to get additional permits for new development going forward, now and forever in the future, we have to comply with EPA requirements, of course, and with the ones that are contractually obligated for Naperville, because they have to follow the EPA requirements for their treatment and all that they do. By the way, it is an amazingly cost-effective process to have that intergovernmental agreement where we take advantage of Naperville's economy of scale for our sewage treatment instead of building our own. Nobody asked about that, but just in case, that would increase our rates exponentially to create our own system. So moving on quickly, then we were faced with, we need to play catch up on the I&I plan. We did a great program back in 99, 2000, and then stopped. And I don't know why. We were busy. We kept doing all the work we were doing. Didn't realize that we were having more infiltration and inflow than we should in a system. Our system was leaky. So we're playing catch up on that. That is a big, expensive, we were in really a best practice type level and it will meet the requirements, but it costs a lot of money. And had we been doing it for 20 years, we would have been able to have it better under the cost would have been less to do it earlier on than later. Now we're playing some catch up. We hope after the first cycle, we believe after the first cycle, it should be less in the future, but it will never go away. We need to maintain that forever so we don't put anyone in the future into that kind of circumstance. And that sewer holding tank, again, is all part of that cost. So we had big costs that suddenly jumped up that are multiple years going on. We didn't take those into account now that we know we have to, and that has caused us to have increases that are bigger than they would have been. Alderman Wilson put it well, though. These are things we have become aware of and have become a lot more sophisticated about. We have staff and resources in place better than we did to be able to project those things, and we've got to take care of them. We still will be lower, but you know, as a ratepayer in town, if I didn't work for the city, I would say, you know, why is that on me? I have to pay more now because you guys didn't do X, Y, or Z. Thanks for all the low rates in the past, but now they're going up. And that's human nature. I understand that as a water customer. I've lived in town for, geez, I guess 23 years now, and I'm going to pay the same rates as everybody else. But we all wish we didn't have to pay more, but to operate our system, we had artificially low water rates and sewer rates really, but sewer rates were meeting our needs at the time. The scale of those needs though has changed because we've been notified that we weren't complying with some things. I don't know if that helps. That's some of the background of where did this all come from suddenly. I know that Alderman Goodman and Alderman Wilson have been working with Finance and Public Works and I for a long time, even on the first plan, to try to get all this under control and make good projections. And it's a lot of hard work, and they're all very, very helpful because they ask some really tough questions that we have to sharpen our pencils and pay careful attention and do more research. Again, I'll just wrap it up with there will be more discussions about these. We will be back as staff with recommendations through the EMRP, but also for discussion with the council and provide whatever other resources and information you need so you're comfortable with future planning and how we do those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a couple brief things. I hope that there isn't miscommunication over the conversation that Director Kukler and Alderman Widener just had about the cost of the tank. I think the $500,000 figure that Phil mentioned might have been land acquisition, but the total cost, which is that size of that spike on the graph, is estimated at $6 million. That is a huge, huge cost. Just for comparison, those other peaks for the capital expenses for the Naperville sewage treatment plant are $1.8 million a year for a few years. So this is, you know, a one-time expense, but much more substantial. So $6 million. And the fact that we've been able to push it back in the estimated timeline to 2031 makes a huge difference to all of these models. Initially, when we were doing this rate calculation, gosh, I guess this is probably a year and a half ago, we had that tank in 2026. And trying to come up with that money, $6 million by 2026 to pay for something to pay for something that you know, we knew was coming and was an expense that at that time, a year and a half ago, it looked like Naperville was possibly going to follow through and force us to construct in the relatively near future. That would have meant much bigger increases much sooner. So even though these numbers look bad, I just want to tell you that by comparison to what we have been talking about quite recently, they're not as horrible as they could have been. So I don't know if that helps, but just to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other alderman have another comment to make before we kind of wrap it up and ask for a motion? Okay, can I have a motion, please? I'm sorry. Hold on, Alderman Widener, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I heard some very great responses. The only thing I was looking for was some kind of response about the communication to our residents regarding this and how and when that'll take place and how it will be developed.
Madam Chairman,
Okay. Yes. Finance Director Dahlstrom.
as soon as this is approved by the city council, we will be finalizing and working on some communications that would go out both in the hometown happenings. It would go out, it would be my anticipation that we would have some sort of an insert or some information that goes out with the water and sewer utility bills as well. And we would also utilize the social media that we have to make sure that everyone becomes available this as soon as possible. And I should point out also that it won't be immediately in May that this is billed due to the timing of when our readings occur and when we're able to bill. It would likely not be billed until the July bill anyway, so we do have a little time to get the word out.
Alderman Widener, anything else?
No, I'm just wondering whether or not we're going to announce in the communication that residents can expect further increases in upcoming years and whether that would be part of the communication.
I did make note that that was one of the things that you mentioned, and we can certainly look at doing that. My only concern at this point is that might not be in the earliest communications we're able to get out because as we mentioned, we don't know what the out rate or out year increases are going to be at this point. But as soon as we become available, as soon as we know and those become available, we would certainly communicate that with our residents.
Is there, just as a follow-up, is there any kind of help for people who may not be able to afford the hit on this bill? I know I represent some areas where I think, you know, people have trouble meeting their monthly bills, and I just wonder if there's going to be any offer of assistance or how that'll work.
Administrator Coakley, you had a comment? Oh, okay.
I was going to say that's something we can certainly look into as staff if there's any resources available. It's not anything that we've discussed at this point so far.
Okay. Now, Administrator Coakley.
Okay, thank you. I was going to answer on an earlier question. I think we certainly should note in the communications, Alderman, you'd asked about that there are likely to be future increases. What Finance Director is pointing out, we can't quantify them yet, but we certainly should indicate that there will likely be future ones due to increasing costs, the same factors that caused this next year's to go up. We don't want it to be a surprise. You don't want to just say, here's what you're going to have for the coming year, and then the next year have another surprise. I think that's the basis of your comments, Alderman Widener, throughout what you've said. We certainly want to let them know there'll be likely to be increases and that there'll be discussions at council meetings and committee meetings coming up. They could even tune into, but we will be giving them a notice at those times. But while we can't quantify it now, we should certainly let them know they are coming.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions? Okay, now a motion, please.
Alderman Wilson, I would like to make a motion to accept staff recommendation and recommend the City Council approve ordinance 02021-XX, authorizing a 10% water rate increase and a 20% sewer rate increase, both effective May 1, 2021.
I have a motion. I need a
Second, Alderman Davalos.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Wilson and a second by Alderman Davalos.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Can I clarify, please, that the ordinance 02021-XX, that XX will be replaced with an actual ordinance number once we move that to the City Council agenda. We did not assign an ordinance number at this point until this discussion was had, so I will work with the the clerk's office to make sure an ordinance number gets assigned to it.
Okay, Alderman or Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. I didn't realize that was in there either. I would suggest that the motion just simply be changed to approve an ordinance
Yes.
authorizing 10%. We'll have the right number for the council meeting. That's just set for a placeholder. Sorry about that.
Okay,
Motion
Deputy
agreed.
Clerk, did you get that change?
Yeah, I agree to the change.
Okay, and Alderman Davalos, you agree to the change?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Deputy Clerk Gravetti, could you please read the roll?
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Widener,
Aye.
Alderman Crucial,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Ashauer,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman,
Aye.
Alderman Anderson,
Aye.
Alderman Davila.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, motion passes. On to number 2, consideration to allow video gaming in the city of Warrenville. Administrator Coakley, please.
Thank you. In the packet is information based on the historical discussions. There's minutes of meetings from 2009 and 2014 when the council and or council committee of the whole has discussed this matter in the past. This is come up at this time as noted. Alderman Crucial had asked that I included on an agenda. We did discuss it. He asked his, and I'll let him speak for himself in a few minutes here. But both because it would be a benefit to the businesses that would be qualifying, and generally that is establishments that have liquor licenses for what we call pouring licenses, where you'd go to a bar or a restaurant that serve alcohol, not packaged liquors and not other types of retailers, could qualify under the State Video Gaming Act. It was discussed in 2009. The recommendation from our councils of governments, Illinois Municipal League at the time that was passed, was to suggested that if the council wasn't in favor of it, or the village board, what have you, across the state, that it be prohibited initially and then it could be assessed as time went on. And that was generally the stance that the city council took at the time. There was a lot of questions about how it would be administered, whether it be problematic. Since that time, in 2014, 3 organizations came forward, 2 businesses, the Hot Shots Bar over by Subway and Rosati's Pizza, the Town Tap, and the VFW came to the council with a vendor and asked if the council would reconsider and allow video gaming. At the time, there was 2 different discussions at the Public Safety and Legislative Committee in February and I believe April of that year. The end result was a 4-4 split tie on the committee, with the mayor breaking the tie against moving it forward to the council. There hasn't been any council discussion or action since that time. Those minutes are all included in your packet. Additionally, our management analyst, Youngmeyer, put together information that summarizes the state has a website that keeps track of all the video gaming of the communities, how many licenses there are, et cetera. And she just put it into a summary based on the communities in DuPage County, and I believe our comparables that we use for pay issues, towns that are more like us than unlike us. So you can just get an idea of what goes on in other communities. Now this item has been just discussed. There isn't a recommendation per se, but discussed with both the Capital Maintenance Replacement Plan Work Group, for the main reason that the idea is this kind of money would be good to put into a fund like that for capital maintenance. For one, it's probably in the long term now going to stay around in Illinois, but certainly initially we didn't know. We also don't know how that may vary with different owners of businesses and whether it'll be really sustainable. So capital fund is a better place for that kind of money. Secondly, it was also just discussed, recently discussed with the Long Range Financial Planning Work Group, that this had come up, and it's something we may be looking at for the council, and we certainly would put it on this agenda, and that was the plan. As noted in the agenda packet, though, staff has not done additional research. I'm asking that we get a direction from the council. If there is a majority that wishes to pursue this matter, we will do more of a survey of the community eligible businesses, find out what their interest may be, project forward what our type of revenue may actually be then. In addition to looking at some other towns have used their liquor license code and amended it to get a little bit more local control. This is a state regulated matter, but there's some ways that you can control it so it's local businesses that actually would have the video gaming. There's been some other places left it open-ended, and a lot of vacant storefronts suddenly started popping up in the early years, 2010, 2011 or such, where they were like a video cafe. They would serve some snacks and then have video gaming in storefront after storefront. And I don't think that's really what we're looking to do. It would be maybe Red Robin, Town Tap, VFW. I don't know if these all are still interested or not, but those kind of establishments with a liquor license may have the gaming there. The only thing I'm aware of that has changed, two more things since that time. Originally, there was 5 machines allowed in each establishment. That law has since changed to 6. Not a big major change at that point. The other is at the time that the community and our councils of government, Illinois Municipal League, were concerned. The council was somewhat concerned. Even the police department had some questions about, well, since we can't regulate it and there's no oversight directly over the gaming and the establishments, once the city allows it, it's allowed everyone who qualifies, or we don't allow it at all. We can't decide. There's some other limits I'll get to if we get back to more research in the future, but that's generally how it works. The police were somewhat concerned at the time in 2009 that if there were a lot of complaints, they'd get a lot of police complaints over things that there was nothing they could do. Somebody complains their spouse spent all their money gaming, or that the machine didn't pay out fairly, or something else. And it might take up a lot of time, was expressed. I did talk to the chief today to make sure that I remembered his discussion from 2014, and those concerns have not played out in other communities, so that is not something they're really concerned about. And I would characterize the chief as having a real neutral position on it. He's not opposed to it in any way and doesn't see it as a major detriment, if that helps anyone. I'll let him speak for himself, certainly at a future meeting, if there's questions. But the main point tonight was to present this information and the request, and I guess take the temperature of the council, if you will. Is this something the majority is really interested in? Of course, you may change your mind, but if there's not interest in moving ahead, I would suggest that we not want to put staff time into tens of hours of more research and data collection. Plus the fact, if we start serving businesses, there will be an expectation that the council is looking at this in a real way. So I appreciate any direction, and we'll certainly try to answer any questions that come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Krischel, did you want to start this out, since you were the one that kind of brought this forward?
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, I mean, it was something that I had thought of, you know, being a member of the CMRP, looking at fund balances and kind of trying to think of creative ways to increase revenues, as well as looking at the help that we're providing businesses in town. You know, today I think we're doing some great things to help them out, and looking at additional ways that we can, you know, provide them some assistance. And I know that reading through some of this backup material from previous meetings and votes, I think a lot has changed since then. I think some of the unknowns have kind of played out in other communities. And so that's why I was hoping that we could have a discussion here and, you know, as Administrator Coakley mentioned, kind of get a temperature or get an appetite. I think based on the information here we see in the backup, there is a desire for this in other communities. So I think it would do well in our community. And so I'm just curious to hear what other folks have to say.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Widener?
Affects the character of the community still, but I understand the need for additional revenues, and probably should do some additional research to see how many different places would be interested in having it. And I think we're in a day and age where we gotta look at every dime of revenue we possibly can forecast both for small business owners and for our municipality here. So I'm not opposed to furthering on the topic.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Wilson?
I have no comment on this. I'll see what the rest of the people feel. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
So I feel like I'm probably the greenest person on this particular topic. It's not something I've researched or understood before. So I am like Alderman Wilson, interested in what my peers' perspectives are on this. I'm not opposed to gambling at its, just by principle that it should just be ruled out. At the same time, some of my observations of the data that is provided, given the size of our town and the number of establishments, several of the ones highlighted kind of make sense to me, but it feels like we would be in that Itasca, North Aurora level. And so it's a lot of discussion and it's a lot of impact for around $100,000 a year. And so I'll be curious to, if we do the additional research, is that really where it's at? And then I'd ask, then is the bang worth the buck? I'm certainly sensitive to the individual businesses. The constituent who wrote in makes a whole ton of sense. Where am I probably uncomfortable? I actually talked to a friend at one of the towns that's highlighted here, which is a similar town, and asked them their impression. I said, hey, you have this in your town. What do you think? He goes, no, yeah, I know. He goes, it's kind of a bummer. You go out for breakfast and there's this glassed off area where there's video gaming when you're sitting there with your kids at this breakfast establishment. And so I'm interested in, are there any ways to restrict it? Does it make sense? And several that were highlighted, yes. When I think about a Red Robin, which if it would be their right to put it in, sure, but it's a family restaurant, and does that feel great? I don't know. And then when I think about the downtown, we're trying to make this great trailhead, and do we want the epicenter of our, you think about a winery, a coffee shop, the bike shop, all these cute boutiques, great. But if nothing restricts it, then if we also have gaming there as a prominent part of our trailhead, that personally, that doesn't feel quite right to me. And so I'm curious how that works if we were to go forward. So I guess my core questions, if we decide to research it, how many do we think we'll have? What do we think their bang for the buck for the city would be? And then we should keep in mind the impact for the local businesses. Is there any way that we would control the location of the establishments, or is it as long as you've got, I think, the liquor license, then you're good to go? And then lastly, have we already, or will we ask the citizens? I certainly haven't talked to our ward about it, and I'm just wondered, have we talked to the city about it in the process? And if not, would we or not? So those are my questions. And I'm not expecting an answer tonight, but I'm just saying if we do move forward, those are the kinds of things that I would look to understand.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Ashour.
I think it's a good choice to move forward with investigating it. The data we've been provided shows that obviously there's a need, not a need, but it fits. I mean, there's people that I know, I'm not a big gambler, but there's people I know that go out of town because they enjoy gambling. It's part of their entertainment. Well, their entertainment dollars should stay here since we no longer have a movie theater that is bringing in any entertainment dollars. It would help the existing liquor license holders. I have, from the beginning of this discussion, always thought it should be part of the liquor license type control. I don't support the signage you see associated with some of the gambling machines and conversations with staff, it's been noted that we can limit that through part of the liquor control ordinance about the signs that say slots here as an example. But I like the idea that we can regulate it as part of the liquor control ordinance and give the liquor license holders an opportunity to promote their businesses and their restaurant businesses also. Their success is going to be our success in this case. If it does well, the city does well. If it doesn't do well, they're not going to want to do it. I mean, there's some a couple municipalities where they actually have less machines than when they started, and they have had a couple places either close up or stop using machines. But in most cases, they have increased slightly, and the revenues have increased dramatically. And it would be a shame for us to not get our share of that. So I support a full investigation of the possible resource.
Thank you. I agree with many of the questions that Alderman Anderson and Alderman Ashour have just brought forward. I would like some more information as to how we would decide how would we go forward picking those businesses where this would fit the best. That's my issue. I was never opposed before when we voted. I thought places that were mentioned at like the Town Tap, the KV Sports and the VFW were logical places at the time. But I don't know what other locations would be a good fit for this right now. So talking about the Red Robin, yes, it is a family restaurant. I don't know if I would like to bring my children in there, but people bring their children to Las Vegas all the time. Obviously, they can't go in the casino, but they walk by the casino. And as you sit in the restaurant, you have somebody that comes up to you and asks you to play Keno. So it's done right at your table where you're eating. So those are some of the things that I do have questions about. So I think I would like to go forward with a little bit more investigation. Okay, Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't get my mic back on. Yeah, this is a tough call for me. I was opposed to this in 2014 for a variety of reasons. One, at that time, there wasn't a lot of history. Things had been changed since the 2011, 12, and onward, and it just didn't seem to fit the character of Warrenville that we were starting to brand and do different things, and unless we really, really needed the money. At that point, the estimate for Warrenville was about $3,000 a month, so $36,000 a year. I know in 2014 they said that the revenue would be $146. This was in the backup material per month per machine. So of course it would depend on the machines. I too am not sure it's worth. You get enough bang for the buck. I am sympathetic with the businesses to a certain extent. Things have changed since we talked about this in 2014, and the pandemic is a big part of this. I mean, I won't go through all of it, but it's 7 years later. A lot of stuff has changed, even in the way I'm thinking about it. I still do not know how I would vote on it now. My questions, some have been mentioned before. I'm interested now in what the new regulations in the last 7 years are. Is it still a liquor thing? Before, the police didn't have jurisdiction to do much of anything about anything, unless a real big law was broken. Unless someone shot somebody, or there was an assault, or there was a theft of some kind. and that sort of bothered me a little bit. So I'd like to know if some of that stuff has changed. I'd like to know the percentages of how the revenue is split now. Is it any different than in 214? I wasn't quite clear about that from the backup that we have so far. And to address one of Alderman Anderson's questions, I've been cutting out articles and saved everything from 214. And there have been numerous articles in the Daily Herald. You know, we went through the whole thing with DuPage County and unincorporated and this and that, and there's been lots of information out there in the newspaper. So I have all those articles, and I have been trying to keep up. I noticed that when St. Charles was a no for a long time, and then they began to discuss it, and one of their aldermen said, I would like to get, quote unquote, I wanted to get the pulse of the community. So in this particular, we can't go back to the community on every single thing. In this particular issue, though, it would be interesting, and I'm sure we will hear from the community, because there's social media, there's more ways that they can communicate than there were in 2014. I just have a lot of questions. So I guess on the issue we're voting on, well, I cannot guarantee a yes vote. Probably I need more information, and that's exactly what we're voting on tonight. So I would probably be inclined to vote yes on this, on what's being brought up. But that not is in any way tied to how I would feel about the final vote. Either way. So that's just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Alderman Goodman.
Thank you. I think a lot of what Alderman Davalos said makes sense, that hearing from the community would have a lot of impact on how I feel about this vote. I do want to mention that I think Alderman Ashour must have missed the part of the weekly report that mentioned the movie theater's reopening date. So that's very exciting and coming soon. And I'm also so glad that we are not like Las Vegas, where people ask you to play Keno at your restaurant table. So I guess my questions for staff would be, what does staff expect to research specifically, and how long does John expect staff to have to spend on it if we approve this motion tonight? Because we have been told repeatedly what tight limits currently exist on staff time. I think Ron spoke during the budget that at the moment his staff time is golden. So if we are approving this tonight, who's doing it and how much of their time are we committing, and what might we be taking them away from that they otherwise need to be doing? And I'm hoping someone can actually answer this now before we vote.
Okay. Administrator Coakley.
Okay, thank you. Let me take a run at that. Primarily, it would be probably our management analyst taking some of the lead on the research, working with me, I think there'd be a small degree of some finance input. Certainly want to get police input because there's, again, some questions even asked about their involvement, and would run some things by the attorney. A lot of the lion's share of the work will be doing a survey of our businesses that would qualify under the statute to, one, find out if they're even interested. That gives us a census of the possibility, should the council approve it. If there's only 10 interested, if there's 5 interested, a Red Robin may not, but Rock Bottom may be, for example. There's other restaurants that are not as family oriented in our community that may be interested. So finding out that, to estimate then from that, if they had 6 machines and trying to extrapolate from like types of businesses and communities, what that would be to project the costs, or project the revenue that we would get. We could answer the questions also through a little more research about the split, who gets what, the state, the business owner, the vendor of the machines, this local city. There's a set amount or percent, I believe it is, that the municipality gets, as I recall from the research several years, or 6, 7, 8 years ago. Excuse me. There's also some, I know, for example, Carroll Stream has done a lot of work with their liquor control ordinance. They created a whole new classification to try to put some local controls on this. They've done very well. There's some other communities that also have, but I do recall them offhand. So we do some research on the liquor controls. That will take a little more time from the attorney. That's where I will have the finance director a little bit more involved, but he will not be leading on all of this. But we can discuss those kind of things. And of course, we'll have to talk to the liquor commissioner as we're going through that, which is the mayor, to bring his time in. I envision tens of hours, not hundreds, A lot of it would be the research, getting the the survey instrument out, talking or mailing it out or emailing it out to the businesses, whatever we choose to do, then getting that back and compiling it and talking with some of the communities. So to get more of that data and the attorney. So it may be just a ballpark, somewhere in the range of 20 hours of staff time or maybe 30. It all depends on how quickly we get those responses and how many details that start coming out. Sometimes you start asking questions of the attorney and there's more research that needs to be done. I hope that answers your question. It's a case of if the council is interested in doing this and wants us to pursue it, we will find the time to do that. I'm hoping we would bring this back with the additional information at the next Public Works and Infrastructure Committee in June. That would give us a full 2 months to get working on it. We would take the direction from the committee tonight, not wait for the council to give additional direction because you're not taking final action on this. If that proves impossible, then we would come back to a future committee meeting. It might not necessarily be this one as soon as we have the information, but that would be the goal that we would set out so we could keep it moving along and plan along that time frame. Hopefully that answers the questions.
Okay.
It
And
helps.
then,
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Alderman Goodman, are you, is there anything else you would like to say?
I just wanted to know if that would also include additional legal fees, or if that would be covered under our retainer.
Yes, that's the question to me.
Administrator Coakley.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm thinking, sorry. I don't have a solid answer on that. Sorry, it'll depend on how much work is involved. If it's just some simple questions and it's a matter of a couple hours, it would be under the retainer, certainly. If it gets into a whole lot of original research, then it would be an additional charges. At this point, I would have to believe that their firm has done enough of that research already that they have the answers. It would likely not be additional charges to the city. Because they represent, I believe, around a dozen communities throughout the metro area, and they must have encountered this before. I have not started that conversation yet, again, because I didn't want to get Brooke tied up on other things. We give her plenty of work without doing things that the council may not want us to be working on at that point. So I don't know, but I would speculate that at least initially it would be under the retainer, if not the entire thing. I think they'd have everything ready to share with us without having to do more work.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Now, Mayor Brummel, comments?
Thank you. It has been a while since we discussed this seriously. A lot has changed in the intervening years, so I'm certainly not opposed to taking another look at it and seeing if there's some accommodation that can be made. So I would be in favor of the request from staff to, or I should say the request for the vote to do some additional research and come back with some recommendations.
Thank you. Okay, I need a motion, please.
This is Alderman Crucial. I'll make the recommendation here. I'd like to recommend to direct staff to conduct additional research on video gaming and develop recommendations for consideration at a future committee meeting.
Second, please.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Crucial and a second by Alderman Davalos. Deputy Clerk Gravetti, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Crucial,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson, Alderman Wilson. Come back to you. Alderman Anderson.
But Anderson, aye.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Goodman.
Nay.
Alderman Davalos.
Alderman Davalos?
Sorry, I didn't have my, aye.
Thank you.
Alderman Widener.
Aye, and I believe Alderman Wilson's mic is engaged now.
Alderman Ashour.
Aye.
Thank you.
Alderman
And Alderman Wilson?
Wilson's phone is on. Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Is that
Motion
everyone?
carries.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, thank you. All right, on to item number 3, consideration of a housekeeping policy. This Assistant City Administrator White, please.
Thank you. As you're all aware, the Safety Committee has been working on policy updates. So this is the next policy in a series already reviewed over the last several months. There is a backup of a copy of the policy in the backup under item F3, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. You will go for comments and questions. Mayor Brummel, please.
Thank you. I support the staff recommendation on this item.
Okay. Alderman Anderson.
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Alderman Ashaw.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions or comments. Alderman Davalos.
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman.
Nothing from me.
Thank you. Alderman Kerschel.
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Alderman Widener.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alderman Wilson. Alderman Wilson, your microphone is not on. There you go.
Am I on?
You're on.
Okay, I'll do it again. Recommend City Council adoption of the Safety Committee housekeeping policy effective immediately.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Wilson.
Yeah.
And a second, please.
Second by Alderman Davalos.
Second by Alderman Davalos. Deputy Clerk Gravetti, please call the roll.
Alderman Ashaw?
Aye.
Alderman Goodman?
Aye.
Alderman Widener?
Aye.
Alderman Anderson?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Berry?
Aye.
Alderman Davalos?
Aye.
Alderman Kerschel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. On to number 4, consideration of IDOT local agency agreement for Trailhead project. This is Public Works Director Kugler.
Thank you. The city, as you may know, has federal surface transportation program funding in the amount of $377,000 and $500 to cover a portion of the construction and construction engineering costs for the Trailhead project. The final design documents are currently being prepared for submittal to IDOT, and our anticipated letting on this project is July of this year. The part of that submittal will include the agreement that's included with the agenda backup materials. The agreement's a standard IDOT agreement, and it defines what costs the federal funding will cover and what costs are the responsibility of the city. It's a standard IDOT agreement, as I just mentioned, and it's we've used it on projects like the Williams Road Bridge replacement and the Butterfield Road Streetscape project. I'm going to share my screen here for a second because there were a couple of questions that were asked earlier today about this item. Okay, can everybody see my screen now? First question was, are all the costs being that are recommended within the approved budget for the project? And the costs that are included in the 2 agreements on tonight's agenda are included with the decision package that was the Community Development Decision Package 2205 that's in the proposed fiscal year 22 budget. That's expected to be approved by council next, the budget's expected to be approved by council next Monday night. There was a question about whether the aggregate budget for the trailhead's been formally approved or not. And there's been no formal approval of the total project budget. Originally, staff had authorization to apply for this STP funding in 2016. That was based on a construction cost estimate of $457,575. And an overall cost estimate of close to $600,000. That included all phases of engineering construction. When staff recommended approval of the final engineering design contract in December of 2020, provided council with an updated $967,000 cost estimate, and also the project scope that increased as part of that. And then additionally, when staff recommended the cost sharing of the Illinois Prairie Path Heritage Display, City Council a couple of months ago, that updated the cost that added $90,000 to the cost, which increased the cost estimate to $1,057,000. There's a question about the trailhead project, originally going to be a couple $100,000 and has increased to over $1 million, and what caused this increase. And there's a couple of primary factors that caused the increase. One being the original the restroom building was supposed to be a very utilitarian kind of prefabricated concrete building, and over time that evolved into something that's a little bit more appealing architecturally, working with the staff working with the work group. And that added about $200,000 of cost to the building itself. And then that, as I mentioned, the Illinois Prairie Path Heritage Display added another $90,000 worth of cost, construction cost to the project. And when you increase the scope and the amount of stuff that's included in the project, that also increases engineering. So the engineering costs also went up, and that makes up the majority of the cost increase on it. So while it was never exactly a couple $100,000 project, it was probably more like $600,000 to start. The cost did increase quite a bit over time, and hopefully that's at least provides a good answer to those questions. Let me see if I can unshare my screen. Nope, that's not it. All right, now I'm at a loss for unsharing my screen here. All right, John, Kevin, how do I unshare my screen? I'm losing the.
Bill, there should be a box that appears somewhere on your screen that shows the participants.
Yep.
Yeah, so there should be a little screen there. It should be green right now because you're sharing. If you click it again, it should go away.
Okay, thank you. Is that it, Director Kukler?
That is it. I'd be happy to entertain any questions now.
Okay, good. Let's start with Mayor Brummel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. From my perspective, this is a very worthy project, and I really hope the committee will see its way clear to support it going forward. Cost increase largely because of the building. If you took a look at the drawings of the building in the backup, it's a pretty attractive building that will be a nice addition to our rehab downtown area. So I'm very much in support of this, and hope again that the committee will see a favorable vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Anderson.
No additional questions or comments. I appreciate the follow-up by Public Works Director Kukler. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Ashour.
Just the concern that the project has exploded to over double the cost of what was projected. I can understand some architectural features, but 450,000 to well over $1 million is pretty extreme. I support the project. It's just that there's got to be some place we can cut some of that back.
Okay, thank you. I like the project. I've always liked the project. I think that some of the delays with the project, when there was a lot of discussion with many of the other people involved with the project, took a long time in deciding where this was going. I think the delays were very critical to this increase in pricing. So I'm disappointed that that happened, and I want this to go forward. So I think the community will enjoy it. But like I said, I am disappointed in the committee itself, and it's taking so long to kind of push this forward. Alderman Davalos?
Yes. Couple of things, and I promise I will never ask this question again. The 630,708 that is approved, that we approved in the budget, is all of that covered by the park funds, or just part of that covered by the funding we get for, that we take a third and the park district takes 2/3 or whatever? My understanding is most of that is covered by that, right?
It's my understanding that all of it is.
All of it. That's the answer. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm in favor of this. I agree with Alderman Berry. I think, it'd be interesting to know if we'd waited. The STP funds, we had such a low estimate going forward. And then if we could have only gotten the funds on the higher estimate. Anyway, there's a whole lot of things that are situational. Like, I kind of thought the Prairie Path Heritage Association would pay for the whole monument, but it turned out to be a much more beautiful, intensive, really interesting place for the historical little area there, which I think is worth it. I think all the upgrades and everything have been worth it. This is a bigger deal than just a moment on the Prairie Path. I mean, this is an advertisement for a town. I mean, there are wayfaring signs in there. There's information about our community. There are now customers for some of those businesses that are trying to be developed along that area. I just think it's bigger than just a beautiful place for people using the Prairie Path to stop. I just think it's much bigger. So I'm in favor of this, and I think it's been funded really well. I mean, it is a lot of money. I agree with that. But I think it's been that the funding has turned out to be, we've had really taken out of the general fund. So I'm very happy with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman.
Thank you. I want to agree with almost all the points that Alderman Berry and Alderman Davalos just made. As a substantive matter, I love this project. When we were working on the Route 56 streetscape work group for 10 years, we could only have imagined an amenity like this to put an entranceway on our community and help introduce people to Warrenville who are, approaching us along the Prairie Path or even really along Route 56 in general. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to look cool. I think there's going to be amenities for the community. I think this little shelter area reminds me a little bit of the one at Cerny Park. I'm very interested in seeing how the materials work next to the gazebo and how they complement one another. I'm hopeful that it's done in a pretty way because this is the heart of our downtown civic center. I do think that construction costs have been skyrocketing during the pandemic. I have a cousin in the construction industry who said that a sheet of plywood he used to buy for $30 is now $50 if you can get it. Costs have really gotten out of control. So I hope that the cost estimates that we're seeing on this project actually end up being the costs when we're building this. I guess that's true of all construction. But I also have one question that isn't on the substance. It's just about the procedure. In past years, we've generally taken council votes for decision packages. And this year, to the best of my recollection, we did not. So I wonder from staff, is that coming as a separate vote when we vote on the budget? Because I don't believe that was the plan. But then I guess just the question of, will we be going back to voting on decision packages individually at some point? Or if we're stopping that entirely, then what was the rationale?
Administrator Coakley, would you care to answer that?
Excuse me. I apologize. I was thinking that had been done at the budget workshop. I would never doubt your factual recall, Alderman. So I'm going to have to go back and look into that. I thought there was something at that workshop where they were directed to be all left in for the coming year. And so we've been moving ahead on those. I will certainly go back and check and then bring that up at the next council meeting, but I really can't answer that any more than that at the moment.
Okay, well, even if there was one net vote, which I don't think there was, we used to have, individual discussions on the decision packages and vote on each one, as recently as a couple of years ago. So if the procedure has changed, I just wondered why.
Okay, any other comments, Alderman Goodman?
Nope, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Krischel.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Widener.
Yeah, thank you. When I handed in the decision package several years ago on this project, I just intended for it to replace a hidden bathroom that was surrounded by buckthorn, and it has grown into an element that I still support. It includes partnerships with Illinois Prairie Path and DuPage County and the city of Warrenville, and I'm sure the Park District will be involved. So it coordinates a lot of different groups. I see it as a destination for people with architectural features and design elements. It'll be operational 365 days a year. And I think this is the kind of character that people know and love about Warrenville when they recognize what they like about living here. It's these kinds of elements and these kinds of things that go on in a community that people identify with, and they bring their grandchildren to and show them, the great place to depart for a bike ride or to have a picnic in the middle of a bike ride. So it's costing some money. I remember people were very critical when the Forest Preserve bought Donata Equestrian Center and the surrounding land for $21 million years ago. And 3 years down the road, when people are using it and then the trails and see the heron rookeries and see all the participation with horseback riding and all the different things you can do there, the amount of money quickly falls away into hindsight. And I really think this is going to be great for running groups, hikers, bicyclists, dog walkers, and be a major city attraction. So I appreciate all staff's work and like the fact that we've obtained a significant portion of grant dollars to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Yeah, I'm very much in favor of this, and I have been. I've only lived here in Warrenville for, about 16 years, but I think it's improved itself, started out, and now includes a replication of the railroad station that, Warrenville used to be a railroad stop. And I think for history's purposes, it needs to be there, and we have it now. And this whole area is going to be the beautiful sight when you drive down on Butterfield Road or, and just take a look at this. And I think it's wonderful. I'm totally in favor of it. And I think they've all done a fantastic job to put it all together and make it a beautiful addition in the center of our city of Warrenville.
Thank you. All right, let's see. We will need a motion, please.
Alderman Widener will be pleased to make the motion to recommend City Council pass a resolution approving the agreement and authorizing Mayor Brummel to execute the local agency agreement for the federal participation in an amount not to exceed $1,008,208 that will be cost shared with $377,500 of STP funds and $630,708 by the city of Warrenville for construction and construction engineering.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Alderman Widener and a second by Alderman Wilson. Deputy Clerk Gravetti, can we have a roll call, please?
Alderman Berry?
Aye.
Alderman Goodman?
Aye.
Alderman Widener?
Aye.
Alderman Krischel?
Aye.
Alderman Anderson?
Aye.
Alderman Davalos?
Aye.
Alderman Ashaw,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Okay, number 5, consideration of construction professional services agreement for the Trailhead project. Let's see, we have Public Works Director Kukler.
Thank you. And this is just building off the last item, the Trailhead project. Our agreement, the proposals from Engineering Resource Associates, who's been involved in the phases of design on this project. The individual the city is utilized for construction engineering on our annual road program is reserved for this project. We've got a commitment that ERA will have Andy Johnson working on this project, and ERA has performed well on several projects for the city in the past, and we're very satisfied with the construction engineer that will be on the project. So we're recommending approval of this contract. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Comments and questions. Mayor Brummel?
Thank you. No comments and questions, just the support.
Okay. Alderman Anderson?
No comments or questions.
Thank you. Alderman Ashour?
No questions, thank you.
I also have no questions or comments. Alderman Davalos?
No questions or comments tonight. Thank you.
What time are you going to bed?
What?
Alderman Goodman?
What time are you going to bed?
Is that Emily?
I don't know who's speaking.
Okay, I
Someone-
have nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Krischel?
I have nothing either. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Widener?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Wilson?
I have no comments, and I'd like to recommend the city council pass a resolution approving the agreement and authorizing the city administrator to execute the professional engineering services agreement in the amount of $93,890.
Alderman Widener seconds.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Wilson and a second by Alderman Widener. Deputy Clerk Gravetti, could you please call the roll?
Alderman Davalos,
Aye.
Alderman Ashaw,
Aye.
Alderman Krischel,
Aye.
Alderman Widener,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman,
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. On to number 6. Consideration to purchase replacement streetlights for Cantera Village. Public Works Director Kukler.
Thank you. The Cantera Village streets are going to be resurfaced in the 2021 road program this year. And staff inspected the streetlights in the subdivision, and they're definitely in need of replacement. The light poles that were used here were not the standard city light poles. There were some alternate that was picked years ago, and they've not held up as well as our standard poles do. They will be replaced with our city's standard light poles, which are Sternberg poles. KSA is the local manufacturer's representative who the city works with to arrange for our light pole purchases from Sternberg. And Sternberg is the one source for these city standard light poles, so staff is recommending waiving competitive bidding so this purchase can be made. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Mayor Bromo, please.
Thank you. No questions. I'm in favor of this.
Alderman Anderson?
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Ashour?
No questions.
Thank you. I did have a question, and I can't find it in my notes, but it had to do with the freight involved in the quote. Are these items being shipped from the location, from the company itself, or from the manufacturer?
From the manufacturer.
Okay, because it was kind of a hefty amount for freight.
Yes. No, yeah, it's from the manufacturer directly. It's not the KSA is the local representative of the manufacturer.
So they're going to prepay and add this to the invoice. So that adds that amount of money to this invoice, correct?
No, the grand total is $80,000.
That includes the freight?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Davalos?
No. No questions.
Okay. Alderman Goodman?
Just wondering if this is coming out of the CMRP and if it was in the budget.
It is coming out of the CMRP, and it is included in the proposed fiscal year 22 budget.
The proposed budget, but not this year's budget, because it'll happen in, we're approving it now for the next fiscal year?
Yes, yeah, the lead time on these is weeks from when we place the order, so.
Gotcha, okay, I wasn't sure. I mean, given the state of shipping right now, maybe I shouldn't be so surprised. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Alderman Crucial?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, Alderman Widener?
Yeah, just a question of why are we waiving the bid requirement?
This is a sole source purchase. If we bid, this will be the only bidder.
Okay, I wish we could get free shipping, but thank you.
Yeah. Me too. Alderman Wilson?
I have no comment, and I'd like to recommend the city council pass a resolution waiving the competitive bidding requirement of the city code and approving the purchase of new streetlight poles from KSA Lighting Incorporated in connection with city road work.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
Okay. We have a motion and a motion by Alderman Wilson, second by Alderman Davalos. Deputy Clerk Rivetti, please, the roll call.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Widener,
Aye.
Alderman Crucial,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Ashaw,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman,
Aye.
Alderman Anderson,
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Motion passes. Good. Okay, on to number 7, consideration of engineering agreement for sanitary sewer flow monitoring. Public Works Director Kukler, please.
Thank you. Just a couple more items here for me. The agreement included with the agenda backup materials is for flow monitoring the sanitary sewers in the general area of the Maple Hill, Fox Hollow, and River Oaks subdivisions. The flow monitoring, as you may recall, is the first phase of work in each basin. It's investigative work to try to determine they install the flow monitors before the rainy month like May and monitor the flows in there so they can get a good feeling for where the groundwater might be coming from entering the sanitary sewer. This is the 4th basin out of the city's 11 that we are starting work in this year. And as I mentioned, the flow monitors will be installed in May, and they should capture the flows in what is historically, at least in recent history, been a very rainy month. So it's been a good time these last few years to get these flow monitors in place. And we ask council to approve this contract now so we can, the consultant hit the ground running May 1st. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mayor Brummel.
Thank you. Well, clearly this is something we need to do. Reflecting back on our earlier discussion of item number 1, this is part of that program to try to keep our costs down. So absolutely, we need to move forward.
Thank you. Alderman Anderson.
Just a question. You mentioned we have 11 of these. So will there be, so each year do we do like 2 more or how does that work?
So originally when the consultant helped us develop the I&I reduction program, they divided our sanitary sewer system into 11 basins of approximately equal size, just to make it more manageable chunks to evaluate and eventually do repairs in. So when this originally started, we did the flow monitoring in the first basin. And then the second year we did the flow monitoring in the second basin, plus then the second phase of the first basin. And then the third year, which was last year, we'd be doing construction in the first basin, flow monitoring in the third basin, and the second basin would be some additional investigation work. And it should now be 3 basins should be under some phase of work every year now until we get to year 13, which would be construction of the repairs in the 11th basin.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Ashour. Alderman Ashour? Okay, there you are.
No questions.
Thank you. I have no questions. Alderman Davalos?
No questions.
Excuse me. Alderman Goodman?
Nothing from me.
Alderman Krischel?
No questions, thanks.
Alderman Widener?
Yeah, Director Kukler, will the additional basins require a similar sum of money as we get into that in future years?
Yeah, it varies. I want to say last year's contract might have been $50,000 or in that neighborhood. So it seems like it's about $40,000, $50,000 each year for the flow monitoring.
And we got 4 done and 7 to go?
This will be the 4th, and there'll be 7 more after this year, yes.
Okay. Thank you, that's all.
Okay, Alderman Wilson, please.
I have no comment, and I'd like to make a recommendation that the City Council pass a resolution approving a contract with Engineering Enterprises Incorporated for a West 1 Basin infiltration and inflow investigation in an amount of $39,748 and authorize the city administrator to execute the proposal.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Wilson and a second by Alderman Davalos. Deputy Clerk Rivetti, please read the roll.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Widener,
Aye.
Alderman Crucial,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Ashour,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman,
Aye.
Alderman Anderson,
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, on to number 8, consideration of engineering agreement for sanitary sewer system evaluation. Public Works Director Kukler.
Thank you. And this agreement will be for phase 2 in the basin where we did flow monitoring last year, which that area includes Emerald Green subdivision, as well as the area bounded roughly by Route 59, Xavier Road, and Butterfield Road. As part of this, the contract will include manhole inspections that will be performed by a consultant and the development of a report that summarizes the deficiencies and necessary repairs that will help inform the construction contract for next summer, the summer of 2022. City staff will be televising the sanitary sewers and performing smoke testing in this basin this summer. And last summer was the first time we actually performed smoke testing on our own, which I thought went pretty well. I thought we communicated well, and staff did a good job of handling that process during the summer. So we'll be doing that again this summer. And Engineering Enterprises will be taking not only the manhole inspection information, but also the results of the city's smoke testing and televising, and using all that to help develop their report on the deficiencies in the system and whatever repairs are necessary. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mayor Brummel.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Anderson.
No questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Ashour.
No questions.
Thank you. I have no questions also. Alderman Davalos.
I have no questions also.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman.
My only comment would be on the smoke testing. I did get a couple of phone calls from alarmed residents, but I think overall it went pretty well. It's the sort of thing that no one is going to be used to, and hopefully they won't have to experience very often, so they don't need to get used to it, but it is an odd and can be somewhat alarming thing.
Yep.
So I hope that staff makes a high priority of communicating well with residents in the areas where these are going to be happening so that they can be less confused.
Yep, we will.
Thank you. Alderman Crushel.
No questions, thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Widener.
No questions, thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
I have no questions, and I'd like to recommend the City Council pass a resolution approving a contract with Engineering Enterprises, Inc. for the Central one, basin infiltration and inflow investigation in an amount of $53,796, and authorizing the city administrator to exercise the proposal.
Second,
Alderman
Alderman
Widener,
Deveraux.
second.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, who was doing that? Was it Widener or
Give it
Develos?
to Alderman Widener.
Okay.
Either one.
Well, we have a motion by Alderman Wilson and a second by Alderman Widener. Deputy City Clerk Gravetti, please, roll call.
Alderman Crusoe,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Anderson,
Aye.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman,
Aye.
Alderman Davalos,
Aye.
Alderman Widener,
Aye.
Alderman Ashour.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, motion passes. Number 9, consideration of a request to dispose of surplus city property. That would be management analyst Kristen Youngmeyer.
Thank you and good evening. Staff have identified a number of items at City Hall as well as the Public Works Garage that are either not being utilized or have been replaced due to age and condition. So staff is seeking authorization to either sell the items using open hop auction services or recycle the items. Items for this agenda item can be found in your backup materials, and in the list I'll indicate if they're either going to be sold or recycled. For the items being recycled, there were a number that were either old electronic equipment or computers. So for those, we would be using e-scrap technologies. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Brummel.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
No question.
Alderman Ashour.
No questions.
Thank you. I do have one question on the e-scrap technologies. Is this recycled or is this sold? Is this just recycle only?
I believe it's just recycle.
Oh, okay. Assistant City Administrator White said she could answer that. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, it's all recycled. They will pick up all of the material from the city and handle all the recycling of all the electronics for us.
Okay. So OpenOff will only be doing auction on the other items, anything that's not electronic.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. All right, Alderman Davalos?
Yes, can you just remind me, this money comes back to the general fund? Is that where it comes back to, or CMRP? Probably just the general fund, do you know? I'm just curious, I forgot.
It's the general fund for public works items if it was connected or a particular fund, it might go back towards that, but in general, it would go to the general fund.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman?
I noticed 29 garbage cans on the list, and this made me think that there's going to be an awful lot of people in town who are getting these new toters from our new garbage contract who are going to be throwing away garbage cans or trying to find something to do with them. I've already been asked by a parent what to do with old garbage cans and whether the trash hauler will take them away. I am surprised to see that they're considered auctionable and that somebody might actually buy them. I mean, I don't know, should we offer to collect people's garbage cans and auction them? It's probably a lot of work and not worth the money, but any suggestions for what to tell people?
Okay,
Well,
Assistant City Administrator White, or the
Thank
queen,
you.
the queen of trash talk.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Mhm.
So I've gotten similar questions. I have been offering different solutions. You can repurpose them. Some people use them to hold their yard materials or lawn materials, rakes, things like that that are lengthy and sometimes hard to store. I've seen some people turn trash receptacles into water barrels for use. You can throw them away ultimately, but obviously as a recycle friendly community, we would prefer that people repurpose them and use them for yard collection instead of bags and things like that. But if they do absolutely need to get rid of them, they can throw them away.
Okay, but I doubt most individuals will be able to auction theirs. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Kerschel,
No questions.
Alderman Widener,
No questions. Thank you.
and Alderman Wilson.
I have no questions, and I'd like to recommend the City Council approve an ordinance authorizing disposal of city-owned surplus property by either utilizing Obernoff auction service or e-scrap technologies.
Second, Alderman Ashour.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Wilson and a second by Alderman Ashour. Deputy Clerk Rivetti, please call the roll.
Alderman Ashour,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman,
Aye.
Alderman Widener,
Aye.
Alderman Anderson,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Davalos,
Aye.
Alderman Christian.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Number 10 is discussion of the FY22 budget. City Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. A couple of things. One, this item is on, as promised, every agenda right up until the passage of the budget, which is scheduled for next Monday's council meeting. Secondly, though, back to Alderman Goodman's question earlier, I was trying to think back when you asked the question and I wasn't quite sure. During the ensuing discussion, I took a moment and checked the minutes of the meeting and refreshed my recollection. Seems like it was months ago. It was only last month, less than a month ago that we had the budget meeting, in fact, by a day. But we did do a different format. It seemed more efficient, especially with the virtual setup this year. What I didn't realize is you were absolutely correct. There was not a vote on each. Now, I can't remember going back a number of years. I know some years there was at the end of the meeting, we discussed all of the decision packages, and then there was either a group vote to move them ahead or consensus head nods or actually votes on each one if there was discussion. And according to the minutes, and now my recollection, there wasn't. We discussed them with each fund. And as I said then, I wouldn't challenge you on the facts ever because your recollection is going to be much better than mine. But you were correct. We didn't vote on each one. I think we assumed, I did, that based on the discussion, if there wasn't a lot of concern, that they were certainly okay to go ahead and keep in the budget, and then you'll be voting on them with the budget. If that's not okay, I can have on the next agenda, we could list them ahead of the budget approval. That's a little later than normal, but if that's an oversight on our part and the council would like to have further discussion or a specific vote on each decision package, we can certainly do that. I certainly know that there is at least one alderman concerned. So I'd appreciate input on that. And then, of course, if there's other questions about the budget that we can answer tonight, or even up to next week before the budget vote, we'll certainly be happy to. Thank you.
Okay, let's go through the roll again and ask for questions or comments. Mayor Brummel?
Thank you. I have no questions or comments, just that I was satisfied with the process at the budget meeting in terms of the decision packages. There was no dissent in terms of moving them forward, even though there wasn't a formal vote. So whatever the council wants to do is fine, but my assessment or remembrance of what we did there was that there was consensus to move ahead with all of them.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
No questions in aggregate of the budget. I don't think, as I recall the budget meeting, I thought we were being apprised of those packages. I don't think I felt myself at that moment signing off on those. So maybe in the future, it being a little bit more overt would be helpful. I think that's what we'll be doing next week when we approve the actual budget. So if I have any issues that, between now and then is the time to be bringing that up, but I don't have any right now, and don't have any other recommendations. Thanks.
Alderman Ashour.
As you suggested, the administrator, we could possibly list them. And if anybody wants to pull one and have a vote on it, we could do that or approve them as a package.
Okay. I kind of feel the same as Alderman Ashour. We can take that as my vote. Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I remember thinking that morning, well, actually, I remember thinking when I got home in the afternoon that it was a different process. And so it didn't bother me that much. I think I was pretty much in favor of the decision packages, but I'm sorry, I think I agree with the other alderman. We might as well have an official, vote and be intentional about it in case in the future there's ever an issue. So I agree with Alderman Ashour, just maybe list them and people can feel free to, if they have a concern.
Okay, Alderman Goodman.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we have had a process to vote on this in the past. I think we should vote on it. And, if we have one big vote or if there's any reason for further discussion, we can talk about that at the time. Either way is okay with me. But I think we should have a separate vote on the decision packages because they are called out as something that we are making a specific decision about. So let's decide.
Thank you. Alderman Kerschel.
Yeah, I think having a list of them, and then if we want to pull one off to discuss it further before voting on the consensus of the rest of them, I think that's fine.
Alderman Widener.
I agree, and then we go back to the other process in future years of budget deliberation at the meetings.
And Alderman Wilson. I don't think I see. Oh, there he is. Alderman Wilson? I don't think your microphone is on. Okay. And Administrator Coakley, you had a comment?
Just to clarify, what I'm hearing is the request, we'll put it, it kind of evolved through the discussion, one list with all the decision packages, then if anyone is interested in discussing one more, that would be on the consent agenda. And then an alderman can certainly pull it off as been the practice, and then that can be discussed for that particular item. I guess if that works, if people have a head nod or something. Otherwise, we could list them all individually, but that seems like a lot of agenda items. I don't think that's what you're looking for. I see a few heads nodding, so we'll proceed that way. Thank you.
Alderman Wilson, I saw your microphone go back on. Did you have a comment or a question? Maybe not.
Could I say one last thing, Alderman Davalos? Can I just ask Administrator Coakley? So the vote on the budget, is that going to be before the consent agenda, or is that just an agenda item, part of the consent agenda? I can't remember where it is in the, usually. Sometimes we vote ahead.
Yeah, it certainly legally could be part of the consent agenda. Given the questions about this, I'm going to make sure we put it on the regular agenda. So if there's other questions, I can
Yeah.
I believe that's the way we've done it in many years, but I don't know. It seems like I'm on COVID time zone. It seems like years ago, and it was only 1 year ago we approved the budget. So we'll have it on the regular agenda, and then of course if again, if council wants to pull off anything with the discussion about decision packages, all the staff will be there, so we can certainly go over those again and be prepared to do that. Thank you. I'm glad you pointed that out. Alderman Goodman, I had not realized that that wasn't as overt and specific as it had been. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Goodman, also for pointing that out. Okay, Alderman Wilson, you're on. Your microphone's on. Go right ahead.
No, that's all right. I agree with that. I think we should be able to just list them, and if we want to pull anything off and vote on it, do it individually.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? If there are, raise your hand. Okay, good. That was for information only, and we do not need a motion. And now just the only thing left is to review and to file the Public Works Department FY 2021 work program and decision package status report. That's also a information only. Are there any comments or questions? Mayor Brummel.
Nothing on this item. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
I did not have any. Thank you.
Alderman Ashour.
No questions.
Okay, I have no questions. Alderman Davalos.
No questions or comments, thanks.
And Alderman Goodman.
One item, TI 16, it says complete not proceeding on the pedestrian trail between Fox Hollow and Maple Hill. My understanding was that that decision was actually different than the preceding item, the Warrenville Grove path. We instructed staff to go back and talk to the Forest Preserve about the possibility of extending that IGA with respect to that trail so that we can hunt for grants and try and do that project in the future. There was a different motion on that item, and it wasn't just complete not proceeding. So I hope that that's clear and that this doesn't mean what it says.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my item was to help community development with that. So it's for the time being, for me, it's complete, but community development would be the one leading that effort to talk to the Forest Preserve and try to extend the IGA.
Okay, but not to say that we're ditching the project. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Alderman Krishel.
I have nothing. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Widener
I have nothing. Thank you.
and Alderman Wilson.
It was a wonderful meeting tonight. Thank you. And I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Thank
second.
you. I didn't even have to ask. Great. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Alderman Wilson. Do I have a second? Someone?
I second. Alderman Widener.
Okay, Alderman Widener second. Deputy Clerk Crevetti, please call the roll.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Alderman Ashour.
Aye.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
I loudly say aye.
Alderman Goodman.
Aye.
Alderman Krishel.
Aye.
Alderman Widener.
With great enthusiasm, aye.
Alderman Wilson.
I didn't mean to jump the gun, but I say aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes and we are adjourned. And I would like to thank you all because we got done before 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank
Night,
you.
everyone.
Good night.
Aye.
Thanks so much.